Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastori. Thanks for joining us. Last month, in the monthly House View letter, UBS Chief Investment Officer Mark Halfley discussed the continued theme of 2022 as what we call the year of discovery, and how a new balance between supply and demand across multiple markets has created uncertainty and volatility that continues today. Today, I'm joined by Katie Williams to discuss her recent blog, which is entitled, and I love this title, by the way, Katie, What Would Warren Buffett Do? Actually, you have it as an acronym, is WWWBD. So, Katie, welcome. Can't wait to talk about this with you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to see you, Katie. So in the blog, you do continue this discussion that Mark was talking about, year of discovery, et cetera, but from a more personal perspective. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I found out when reading Mark's piece, which I love to read anything he writes, I always learn something. But this time it was really interesting because I realized how much my anxiety was rising, right? Like how anxious I was getting when we talked about all this ongoing volatility. And, I've got over 20 years of experience in this industry. And so that caught me a little bit by surprise, believe it or not. But because of my experience, I'm also able to stop and intercept when I feel that. And maybe course correct, if you will, and take a step back and really think, okay, I need to be more rational in this moment. And so what would Warren Buffett do, right? And I say that because he and his partner, Charlie Munger of Berkshire Hathaway, are probably the two most famous, rational, and patient investors there are.
Yeah, I've of course long followed Warren Buffett and Charlie over the years and looking at the investments they make, but they also come at it from sort of a rational perspective, right? So, and I would say that some of our viewers today may even identify with you in the fact that they also too find themselves reacting emotionally to this continued volatility in the markets. I'm certain I myself am one of those people that does feel sort of emotional about it. So what suggestions do you have for those of us who do have this emotionality tied to the markets, especially right now?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is, and what's really important, is just to be aware, right? To understand when we have those feelings, that it's completely normal. I mean, we're human beings, we're emotional beings, and this is going to happen. But if you're able to stop and intercept that by pausing and just giving yourself some time and space to evaluate what you're feeling and what your options are, it's going to give you a broader perspective. So, for example, I will be transparent. In these moments, I tend to call my advisor. And the reason I do that is because what they're able to do is talk to me about what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling objectively through the lens of my own financial plan. And so they are able to say, hey, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but if we make a change now or we react, here's the trade-off, right? So does this make sense as it pertains to your plan? What are the risks of making a decision, either moving or not moving now? And again, all of that is able to give me some objectivity while personalized to me, but also give me that broader perspective from that long-term view that I need.
Exactly. And something we often do here at UBS on this show, I know I've spoken about it with you, is we talk about taking a long-term view when looking at one's portfolio, which is all about perspective, right? So maybe you can explain a little bit more about what that means specifically for the average investor who's watching this today.
Well, listen, it is completely natural that when we hear a headline, it's usually off, on our phones or on the TV, that gives us pause. We want to know, what does this mean for me, right? So what do? We go and we check our portfolio. We go check our holdings, and we do this frequently. Well, we have to remember that by doing so, it's going to impact the perception of what we see. So, for example, I compare this to, putting on your favorite outfit, something you feel great in, and then going and looking at yourself through a funhouse mirror. It's going to warp the perception of what you see. And the reason that's so important is because if I go and I look at the S&P 500 every single day, 46% of the time I'm going to see it down, right? So that gives me a perception of volatility. It makes it feel like my investment is risky. But if I just looked at that portfolio once a year, and at the end of that year, I'd be at the same value, regardless if I looked at it daily or just once a year, the chance of me seeing a down day is only 20%. And so that is so important, because if we look at our investments more frequently, it's going to make us feel as though we're riding, a more volatile track. And so we have to remember that if our portfolio are earmarked towards goals that are 1, 2, 3 years off, right, even further, then let's put our phones down, turn the TV off, close the computer, and take a step back. And that's really hard to do, right? We've got to trust our plan. But we have to remember that even the worst bear markets, those losses have been recovered historically in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, you know what, Katie? It's such great advice, and it's something that I know we all struggle to not, we are in the business, so we have to look at the markets every day, and all we do is talk about it. But for those who are not in the business, it's a good opportunity, like you said, put the phone down, turn off the news channels that are talking about the markets or how the Dow or S&P closed up or down for the day, and just trust in the advisor that you're working with, and look at it every couple of weeks. Because you're right, if there's a long-term horizon that you have for your portfolio, chances are you're going to see fewer down days than you, like you said, if you do it every day. So that's really important to remember. And more importantly, it's also perception again, how that view of our information can really shape perception, whether it be good or bad. So something else you also point out is that something that probably many of us do, although we may not be aware, but that may negatively impact our portfolios. What is that?
Okay, so if it weren't hard enough, right, to take that self-awareness and walk away and resist the urge to get on our phones and look, right, is probably some of us don't realize is that every time we look at something, right, and we look and it's down or there's a loss or we're not happy with what we see, it takes emotional willpower for us to recommit to what we're doing, right? So in the blog that I wrote, I compare this to an experience I had a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, where I decided I'm giving up sugar, right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to be disciplined. And it was right before the holidays. And so every time I went to a party, I walked in and there it was, the beautiful dessert table. And I had to walk past it, say, no, this is important to me. This is what I'm doing. And this is why I'm doing it. Well, you can imagine by about the 4th or 5th holiday party I went to, I just was like, forget it. I'm exhausted. I want the cake. I want the cheesecake. And so this in and of itself shows the emotionality that and why that can be exhausting. And in terms of economics, there are 2 very famous behavioral economics where people are probably familiar with, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They actually did a test and named this phenomenon loss aversion. And what it does is it states that the pain of losing something, we feel it twice as powerfully as if we had gained something of equal value, right? So in my situation, the pain of walking out of the party and not having had the cheesecake and missing out on that was far more powerful than the joy I got when I left the party and thought, you know what, I stuck to my goal. I feel really good about it. And so that phenomenon, when you combine that with that funhouse mirror effect I was talking about, it's exhausting. And we have to do this and recommit. The more frequently we look at our portfolios, the more we have to emotionally recommit to sticking to our plan. So you can see why investors, when they are going through these cycles, they say, you know what, I've had it. And they wind up selling out at market lows and sustaining large losses.
Exactly. That's exactly why having a plan and having an advisor you trust that you work with will help you avoid doing what you're talking about, Katie, looking at the losses on a daily basis, freaking out, getting really worried about it, and then selling out. Because we all know that trying to go from the bottom to the top, if you get out before the S&P starts to go up again, it's going to be even harder for you to climb that mountain than if you just stayed in it the whole time. So it's great advice. I hope that people watching today really, really take that. By the way, we can all relate to the sugar analogy, whether it's sugar or bread or drinking or eating anything. We all have that thing that pulls at us at a party or something that we, So if we can equate that to our portfolio, it makes a lot of sense. Great analogies, and thanks for sharing your personal struggle with us, Katie, because the struggle is real. It's certainly real, and I love talking to you. Thanks for joining us, Katie.
Thank you.
Great. We'll talk to you soon. Great advice here for you, everybody. So make sure you're talking with your financial advisor, because they really can set your mind at ease when they set up that plan for you, whether, as Katie said, it's 1, 2, 3 years or further down the road for you. And there's plenty of ways to have that conversation with your FA. So make sure to do that as soon as you can. And for more information on anything that Katie and I spoke about, there's lots of content from our Chief Investment Office at ubs.com/views, plus lots of content also on our various social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, plus all of our past UBS trainings are available on demand for you to view. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, everybody, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great day, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon.